Hey everybody, I thought I would do just a quick announcement today. It's just me today, no co-host, no interviews. I wanted to talk about a podcast that I have coming up next week. It hasn't been scheduled yet, so I probably shouldn't say next week, but soon. It's the one that I'm talking about. I'm calling it the Cabinet Con, and I'm doing so for a very apt reason. You'll find out. After editing it, I realized it's really a lot to take in, a lot of information, a lot of moving parts, especially for early on in our scheduling. Excuse me. So I thought I would put a kind of a detailed intro in there just to prep you for the case that we're going to be getting into, just kind of prepare you and also your community members and your loved ones for a high impact con, really, that's been kind of circulating around southern and midwestern states, probably also parts of the country. I'd love to hear from you guys. If you've heard about this scam going on in your community, shoot me a note. Find me on Twitter and Instagram at Kyle O'Donnell. YouTube channel is also at Kyle O'Donnell. Basically everything I do is at Kyle O'Donnell. Not only do we have the case, right, which includes both the victims as well as a positively identified con artist and other con artists working in concert with that individual. At this point, I have to say that's alleged, but the paperwork's there. On the 24th of August, 2021, we're going to actually see one of these guys in court. He's being, his hearing is on the 24th. We're going to see what goes on with that, and maybe we won't have to call him alleged anymore. But in any case, they're operating in what looks like a ring at this point in the Florida Panhandle area in South Georgia, possibly also as far north as Ohio, where one of these characters is from and kind of has a seedy past. We also have a conviction by the state attorney, as well as the Department of Agriculture investigator that somehow got wrapped up in that. So the state attorney prosecuted this man. I need you guys to let me know if you want me to reach out to her as well. I get reports that she's a really neat person, small but mighty. So we'll see how that goes. I'm probably going to reach out to her anyway, but if you guys don't want me to include it in the podcast, just let me know if you want me to move on to the next case. It's a lot to say in one breath. The conviction reveals a lot about the case, but the targets of this con are really who turned over the bulk of the stones. So, they not only deserve kudos from their community members that obviously they got a dirty dude off the streets, but also a big personal thanks from me for having the ability to share this scam with others and hopefully maybe keep a few folks from getting ensnared in it. Those of you watching this video, be sure to go to Spotify, iTunes, Verbal, anywhere you take in your podcast on audio platforms only, and subscribe to all of the free episodes that'll be coming out on our official launch. And if you're actually listening to the show right now and not watching it, head over to youtube.com/Kyle O'Donnell and subscribe there. All of these links are available on our main website, legallyinsanefilms.com. But I'll be also posting these notes or these links in the show notes and the description of the blog, wherever you find yourself in our audience currently. Remember, this is our pre-launch. Everything that we're doing right now is free, available to everybody and in full episode mode, right? So no teasers, no outtakes, but those are going to be extras and other stuff on Freebie Fridays and other couple things that we're going to launch with this. So if you want to stick with us, why not join the fan club? Head over to legallyinsanefilms.com and stick around long after the launch. We're going to have tons and tons of stuff for you. And FYI, the following episode is in audio. So I'm gonna let you guys enjoy today's Decoding the Cabinet Con, the prequel to our upcoming episode, The Cabinet Con. Enjoy. Just a quick disclaimer, by voluntarily continuing to consume this media in any way, you're agreeing that you understand the following. Number one, no matter what you hear on the show, whether it's opinions or statements of fact, whether it's stated by a victim or a perpetrator or a cop or a lawyer or anybody else, everything everyone says on this show should be understood as alleged unless otherwise proven in the court of law. Number two, the Legally Insane Films podcast and most, if not all, other media produced by me and others associated with Legally Insane Films LLC depicts mature subject matter. It depicts violent and nonviolent crimes, and we often interview witnesses, victims, and others who are vulnerable and who provide sensitive information. The use of this information for illegal, illicit, or even immoral activities is strictly prohibited. And finally, number three, no one at Legally Insane Films LLC advocates for the harassment of perpetrators or alleged perpetrators or their associations. Listener and viewer discretion is advised. So I want to take a quick moment and announce today's episode. We're going to be taking a deep dive into a scam that's befallen kind of an unwitting crowd in Escambia County, Florida, and who knows how many other communities throughout America. This is a scam that's targeted at three distinct groups, and two of those groups are among the most vulnerable and least discussed groups in today's debate over underrepresented communities, which makes this fraud particularly offensive to me. And because of one of these groups is represented by every demographic category in the entire world, it should also be a little upsetting to you as well. The first of these underrepresented groups are those affected by natural disasters. And in a place like Florida, where they have several major storms every year, this is a pretty, available number of potential targets for this scam. The second group is actually the elderly, right? And this is where you should be getting upset, because everyone in the world has or had grandparents, even if they weren't alive when you were born, right? Like everybody has or had grandparents. It doesn't matter if you're black, white, Hispanic, Native American, Hindu, Sikh, Arab, whatever. No one wants to see some scumbag taking advantage of their grandparents. But in today's episode, we're going to be talking about two such scumbags, and one of whom is actually recently sentenced. And this is where we get into the civil action and the grassroots activism part of this show that I really like seeing these success stories. But today's episode, we're going to be detailing a couple of these guys. One was sentenced. The other is actually up for trial later this month, and we're in August of 2021. I'm not sure when we're going to put this podcast out there. We might actually put it out there after his trial and potentially even sentencing has gone forth. So this is going to be an exciting talk. I've gone through pages and pages and pages of court documents, arrest records, LLC listings, property ownership documents, company complaints, BBC, like the Better Business Bureau notifications, and on and on. I mean, I've gone through a veritable heap of this stuff, and I've outlined what I believe is a pattern that makes this con work. Through all these complaints and all this paperwork and stuff like that, I've concluded that there are several similar circumstances that seem to be aligned from many, if not most, of the informants and the complainants in this documentation. So first thing I'm going to do today is outline how that scam works, but I want to take a moment here and remind everyone, head over to legallyinsanefilms.com and click the link at the top to join the fan club. This will give you access to everything we do. That's legallyinsanefilms.com. It's easy to remember Legally Insane Films because the only thing we talk about on this show are legal issues that are insane, and of course we make films about them. So legallyinsanefilms.com. Head over there and sign up. Now that that's out of the way, it is time to talk about how this actual scam works, right? There are several variations of this scam, but it basically, as far as I can tell, has three phases. The first is when the would-be customer, or I guess I'm just going to call them victims from here on out, makes the initial contact. So stage one is what I call initiation. So stage one's initiation. Stage two is called complaint response, because inevitably there will be some throughout this scam, but they're planned for. It's very kind of eerie and calculating and nasty. But the last stage three, is called the final blow, and very aptly named that. I'll get into all of those stages, of course, but first it's important to note that this scam takes a lot of startup costs, right? So you have to be really dedicated to this kind of scam. The scam requires a storefront. It requires a huge selection of floor model cabinets, high-tech software like 3D modeling software. They have to actually use the software and know how to use it to reel in their victims. And of course, all the stationery, receipts, all of the business cards and stuff like that. They also have to have a box truck. This is another thing. A box truck, right, is definitely a good thing to have if you're a cabinet company on the legit level. But the box truck is actually never used for installations, and I'll tell you what it's used for in a bit. It's kind of creepy and eerie. Obviously, the truck needs like company logo. They need frontage. They need all this stuff. A lot of startup costs. So this is how it works. First, the trickster creates what appears to be a legitimate storefront, complete with all the showroom model cabinets, the 3D modeling software, all that stuff, and that hooks their would-be victim. Of course, they have to drive by this big box truck to find a parking spot in the parking lot. They usually have to also have a connection to an actual cabinet outlet retailer, right? Like a manufacturer or something like this, as well as a crew, usually of mostly men, if not all men, who can appear at the victim's home to do a small variety of things, never installs, by the way. They usually also have a website or some kind of an online selection, and oftentimes the scammers actually do make a little bit of money through those channels as well, but that's not where I'm reading most of the stuff goes down. The real scam takes place in the store. Let's see if I can't find some of the documentation here. Let's take it from the physical storefront. Okay, the customer comes in, they visit the shop, they're impressed by these shiny cabinets on display. They make their way into the con artist's office, right? They're sitting behind this big desk with, he's inconspicuously ticking away at the latest design for his most recent customer order, probably. Customers sit down. He dutifully removes himself from his work to pay attention to his customers, as a professional is supposed to do. How can I help you, he asks. Well, we're here. We were hit by a hurricane a couple of months ago, they might say, and it destroyed our kitchen or destroyed our pipes and leaked into our cabinetry. And my wife and I worked overtime for the last couple of months and took money out of our retirement account so that we could fix it, but at this point we want an upgrade, right? Why spend all this money unless we are actually going to go and get marble tops and glass front doors and things like that, something real classy. Is that something you can do? And of course the man will say, taking a complete detour around their recent hardship and almost probably salivating over the idea that he's just going to get a lot of money that they've saved up, right? Who knows where his thoughts are? The pool table he's going to install with their money, or maybe this thing is about drugs or paying off gambling debt. I mean, who knows what these guys actually, does a con artist live a normal life? Who knows? We'll actually talk about where a couple of these con artists live and the circumstances in which they live, and it'll be interesting to kind of tap into that in this episode. But so the victims confirm their order, right? They go through the motions, and this guy, awes them with different designs, and so it locks in with a down payment. Now, this down payment is usually, it's said to be necessary in order to help cover the costs of having someone go out to their home and take measurements of the area that the construction will be taking place. And this is usually where the con stops. And this is very important because sometimes someone actually does come out and take measurements, right? Like the first or second stages. That's the kind of gray area of where they arrive. But sometimes that does happen. Usually it's just to kind of postpone the customer complaints. This stage is important also because it's just a small deposit, which isn't, and this is important, this is why it's important, it's not enough money, generally speaking, that either A, people, if they don't get the service they want, will mess with it, right? They're just like, it's not worth my time, it's a couple $100. And B, here's the other part, it's not worth paying for filing a civil suit, right? It's not worth paying an attorney. It's not worth, paying all the fees associated with process servers and then, waiting for trial to come around, and who knows what happens between then and now. And, at the end of trial, even if you do recoup a couple $100, right? The courts say it's up to you to go after that money. The courts are not going to actually assist you in getting that money from this con artist. So remember this, right? Because these amounts are well thought out, right? These guys know that if they get caught, even if they're caught up in court, right? Even if they're busy going to court over civil cases, they can still be running this scam on other people. Why? Because that $200 is less than a felony level, right? This isn't the case every time. Oftentimes the fee is very large, right? Like they actually get a lot of money. And believe me when I say they're perfectly okay taking that money, even if it is felonious, as in the case that we'll be detailing today. But this is kind of a stage 3 payment, and I'll talk about what that means in a minute. So these victims, they leave the store. They've given them their couple $100 deposit. They're waiting for somebody to show up and do measurements. Now, oftentimes these people take off work, right? I mean, they don't want some strange dude showing up and just have keys to their house. So they take off work. That's the first thing that's kind of annoying to me. Like these people actually position their lives around this. And they wait for the measurements for the install or whatever they agreed to. So they sit and they wait. Nobody shows up. The victims have two options at this point. They can call and complain, which I think most of them usually do attempt to call at least a couple times, or they just find somebody else, right? If they decide to move on, the con ends and the scam artists get away with a couple $100. Now, remember that when the victim signs all the paperwork, and this is key, they give their scammer their phone numbers to call, right? In the event that, quote unquote, their cabinets arrive. Yeah. So like, we need your office number. We need your home number. We need little Jimmy's number. We need, whomever is going to call us or whomever we can call in the event that your phone is down, and also give us your phone numbers as well. So the scammers have all their numbers. And so as soon as the victim leaves the store, right, the scammers simply block all their numbers, and their would-be repeated calls never even ring through, right? The hope is that the victim will basically get tired of calling and simply go away. If, however, they actually get a hold of someone, or they come by the store angry or whatever, this is where the con actually kicks into gear. This is stage 2. This is what I call the complaint response. From the paperwork that I've read, just looking through some of these complaints from Better Business Bureau and court paperwork and things like that, it seems to go something like this. That meeting includes the con artist telling the victim that their work has been backlogged with jobs, they're super busy, or maybe they can't reach their supplier, or whatever the case is. They give them a kind of a very fashioned and well-poised response that usually takes care of everything. But the good news, wink wink, is that they can send somebody out this afternoon. I'm sorry for the delay, totally sorry about that. Let's get somebody out there this afternoon. But to do that, we do need to actually pay a guy, right? So we put your money toward the cabinets, which is what we agreed on, blah, blah, blah. We do need to pay a guy. So it's usually, again, in another like small fee, small sum, and we'll of course apply this to the final order. It all gets upsold, on some level. Usually someone actually comes out and takes measurements at this point, and that I think is done kind of as a damage control for the con itself. I mean, they want to have a little interaction, but not enough. They also kind of want, I'm thinking maybe they want the person to know that they know where they live, maybe in the event that there is some push comes to shove and things like that. And the con artist actually comes right out and says, you may not get your money, but I'm definitely not going to jail, right? And so they do actually know where they live, and these guys are not on the up and up. So I think some people might take that as a threat. Okay, so from the victim's perspective at this point, they basically paid for such crappy service that they normally just cut their losses in lieu of more of the same. Like why work with these people who have already, made us wait, never called, never showed up? I mean, obviously they're shady dudes, right? But from the scammer's perspective, they've basically given these victims a couple of chances at this point to piss off, right? Leave the con alone, or they haven't committed a lot, that kind of thing. And this also keeps the con artists out of hot water, right? They're not taking money to that felonious amount where it's a real serious thing right up front. But in some cases, the victims won't back down. And just when you thought it couldn't get any nastier, that's exactly what happens. Okay, so this brings us to stage 3, and what I'm calling the final blow. Final blow is really where they leave them high and dry, and I'll get into that. But the complaint comes in a third time. Well, I guess a second time, because it's just the first time is when they come in and moves to stage 2. The stage 3 complaint comes in. People are frustrated over being ignored and paying these guys a second time. And the scammer, they profusely apologize. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, blah, blah, blah. They'll get right to it. They'll look right into it. And, they go and they do some paper shuffling and they tick away on a keyboard and they say things like, and, oh, this is interesting, and a couple seconds later, they re-emerge from behind the glass at the back desk and they say, good news, we found your order. I'm so sorry that we couldn't reach out to you, but, this happened when Jimmy was with us and Jimmy no longer works here. And we he left us in our paperwork and our records are a mess. I'm sorry about that, but it does look like we have your cabinets. They've been made, they're custom fitted, ready to go, and they're just waiting for that final costs to cover the fee, right? This is the nuclear explosion bomb that should be going off in your head. At this point, they're given an ultimatum. They can either cancel their order, and of course, at that point, they're reminded that they signed and agreed to their no money back policy, or they can pay upwards of $6,000, sometimes as much as $12,000, as we'll hear today, for the final costs of the cabinets. And this is where the clock starts ticking, right? This, as far as I can tell, is the point where two things happen. Option 1, right? The victim finally gets the hint and either assumes that it's a scam or they just don't want to work with these people under shady circumstances. And I think personally, this is my opinion, this is not coming from any paperwork, it's just like my overall understanding of the scenario. I think the scammers actually prefer this option because the alternative means something else has to happen sooner than it would normally happen after they get the money. Now, before I talk about that, it's kind of stitched into the second option. And that second option, option 2, is that the victims pay out that final amount. And then, because they have given them a felony amount of money, they have to abandon their storefront, right? They have to open up shop somewhere else. But they don't do this immediately, of course, because they're always sure to tell the customer, like, look, it's going to take a couple of weeks for the cabinets to get here, and then it's another couple of weeks before we can install it. We got to order paint. We got to da-da-da-da. They're going to tell them that all of these delays are kind of worked into this agreement, right? So that gives them something of a buffer where they can pick up and leave, but not before reeling in the rest of the scams that they already have going that month. Right. So this gives them not only a buffer on that scam, but gives them a due date on when they need to be out of there and reel in the rest of these scams. All right. Now, one might think that this is a hardship for the scammers. Like, they wouldn't really want to go into this much effort because it means they have to rent another place. They have to put a down payment on another place. They have to load all their cabinets and computers and everything else into their box truck. And this is what they use their actual box truck for. It's not actually for installing stuff. They got to get another storefront somewhere else. All the signage has to be, moved and reprinted or whatever they do there. But from what I can tell, this is actually all a part of their plan anyway, right? They know from the beginning that they can't stay in one place for too long because basically the con has no chance of continuing because they're eventually going to get backed up on these cons, right? And I think when they move from one place to another, they might even scrap those records so they don't confuse them with the next month. Again, just my opinion, just a thought. I believe that they might even have some kind of like a monetary figure that they make it to. And like if they're doing all small numbers, right? Not a couple of these big fish, but a couple of these small numbers. Once they get to that, once they reach their nut, so to speak, they have to abandon ship and set up somewhere else because regardless whether they take a few big payments or a lot of little payments, the liability is destined to catch up with them, right? Like it's always, the clock is always ticking. It's always going to catch up with them. So, they can either take a few big fish or they can take a whole bunch of little fish. And once they reach their nut, they're out. But even with all of that in play, right? it's kind of a solid con if you think about it. Now, I didn't get the impression it worked out for these folks, right? We're detailing a story where these guys got caught. So, I mean, and that's how we know about the scam. But the only reason it didn't work is because several unwitting activists were kind of brought together because of this scam, because of this court case. And they kept fighting. And that's what this show's about. It's about emboldening each other, sharing the information about these kinds of things, and making sure it doesn't happen again, and making sure we fish these guys out, right? Out of our community. They got about as much justice as one can actually get in the American definition of justice, which, it's kind of a shame. We'll see how it works, but we're going to find out today. And for every one of these con artists that gets caught, we're also going to see, unfortunately, that several slip through the cracks. In some cases, even cons associated with that original con just pick up where they left off, right? And I find this out personally, actually, right here in the show. I reach out to the contacts that I find throughout this thing. The contact of the guy, the email address of the guy who's currently in jail is still being responsive to emails. I reached out to them, and this guy, again, this person is in jail, right? No access to computers or the internet. That's kind of a no-no for felons, right? Incarcerated right now. They've already been found guilty on several counts of fraud and fraud-related crimes, and they're still monitoring their emails, and I'm assuming their phones are still being monitored. So what does that tell you, right? We're going to call a couple of numbers. We're gonna get these guys to see if they're still pushing their scam. We're going to do a deep push into the investigation into another individual as well in this segment, and get to the bottom of this thing and find out who these people really are. I hear that there's the mastermind of this thing, or somebody who is sort of supposed to be the mastermind of this thing, actually has a history of doing similar things, if even crazier things, in other states. So yeah, even if they're not still running these scams, and they are, we're going to find that out. And there's really no way they couldn't be connected, these people, because if they're using the exact same email addresses of the man found guilty, and they're reaching out, they're responding in real time to inquiries I'm making from my email address, they have to be corresponding about the access, the password, the contact list, and so on. I mean, they have to. There's just no other way. So keep that in mind. And I should also point out that if you are listening to this episode, the visual episode is going to reveal a lot of I've got everything. I've got pictures of everything you'd ever want on these guys, where they live, their actual homes and vehicles. I've got court documents. I even have their driver's license. And I'm going to reveal it all on the video version of this podcast segment. And so head over to legallyinsanefilms.com, join the fan club, click the link right at the top of the page there for your private member-only access to all the cases we cover. Now on to the episode.